Recently, I returned from a lovely holiday in Florida. We were very lucky that our parents-in-law took us over and we got to take our girls to all the Disney parks, etc. while we were over there for a couple of weeks. Having just recently returned, I wanted to make a video on a little guide to driving over in America and particularly in Florida. So some of us, when we go over, can be a bit more anxious about what to expect from the driving. If I can reassure you, it's very, very simple. And the reason I'm making this video is I actually watched a few before I went out, couple of which were really no good at all, and so I thought I'd do my own. If you haven't seen me before, my name's James. I am a driving instructor in Norfolk. I'm ex-army, ex-trucker. My channel is all about road safety. That's all I'm interested in, and helping people that want to be helped, hence videos like this. Heading over, subscribe, like, it's always appreciated. So before we get started, there's a couple of assumptions that can easily take off 20 minutes of the videos that I watched before I went to Florida. And that is that I assume you know you are going to drive on the right hand side of the road, and I also assume you know that you're going to drive a left hand drive vehicle. So let's move on to the next. While we were over there, we hired two cars. So we had an 8-seater Nissan Pathfinder, which was a really comfortable, lovely vehicle, and that was our main vehicle. My wife and I went off for a few days or for a couple of hours, and we did do separate things from the in-laws on a couple of occasions. So we hired a BMW 2 Series, which was also a very comfortable, really fun car to drive. The Nissan, my father-in-law hired a sat-nav, and the BMW came with an inbuilt sat-nav. I would highly recommend that. Makes your life much easier navigating around the area. On the subject of tolls, so you are going to encounter a lot of tolls in America. Now, the first night we got there, we were very tired, and the hire company offered my father-in-law a deal on the tolls, and they offered $16.99 per day, and that covered you for unlimited toll use. As we didn't know what we were going to use, we thought, yep, we'll take that deal, and it turned out that we probably were best off not to take that deal. A lot of the tolls were only between $1 and $2, and if you're just driving to and from the Disney parks, depending on where you're staying, we were in Davenport near Haines City, we barely touched the tolls at all day to day. It was only when we went to places like the Kennedy Space Center, Clearwater Beach, that we started to actually hit those tolls a little bit more. To give you an example, I hired the BMW for 4 days. During that time, I went to Orlando. I also did a couple of the parks, Blizzard Beach, and we did Hollywood Studios separately. And in those 4 days, I racked up a grand total of $17 in tolls. Enterprise, who I went with, they were very good, and upon return, 6 weeks or so after you've got back, they email you to let you know what your toll usage was once it's all come through, and they just take it off the card that you've already got on the file. So really efficient. Do speak to your hire car company when you get there and ask about the tolls. It's all cashless really nowadays, so there's a little SunPass. It just detects your car and bills the company. So one of the biggest highways we spent most of our time on was US 192. That's the one that's very close to all the Disney parks. Generally speaking, you've got a 3-lane highway where all 3 lanes continue on at all times. If you want to turn left or right, you'll find additional lanes that spring up. And note that these lanes usually have signs telling you that you must give way to bikes before you go into them. Generally speaking, you are looking to observe similar rules to the UK in terms of you actually keep right as a general rule and overtake on the left, although you will find that it's not particularly enforced, and especially in the US and Florida, if there's more than 2 or more lanes in a highway, then you are actually able to pass on either side. But generally that's what we stuck to. We stuck to the right and overtook on the left. With the sat nav, it would tell you in good time whether you're turning right, left, etc. And that's when we would, a couple of miles away, if we were doing a left turn, we would start to move over to the left hand side of the highway. Speed limits will be posted on little white signs. Keep an eye out for them because it changes very regularly. On the interstate, so when I drove up to Orlando, I went on Interstate 4, and I generally noticed that people were a little bit more, shall we say, lane discipline orientated. So there was much more sitting on the right, passing on the left. On the highways, it didn't really seem to be applicable. The interstates, there are essentially our version of motorways. They will have the blue signs, and odd numbers generally run north to south and even numbers east to west. On the interstates, if you've got anyone on the breakdown lane, so essentially that's your hard shoulder, and especially if there's emergency vehicles there, you must move over to another lane. If you can't and you have to pass them in the lane that's closest to them, you must slow to 20 miles an hour below the posted speed limit. Traffic lights are going to become your bread and butter out there. That's how they control the traffic. You're not going to really worry too much about roundabouts. I did one roundabout in my entire 2 weeks there, and that was when we went to Clearwater Beach, and it was this one here, and it was incredibly easy because they even tell you what lane to go in for where you're going. The first thing about the traffic lights is there is a lot more of them than you'd probably expect in the UK, and they're generally on pretty high speed roads like US Highway 192. So you do need to anticipate that as you approach lights. Of course, they could be changing. And although I have seen plenty in the UK, we don't tend to have as many in, for example, national speed limit. So as you're approaching a green light, if you get a yellow light, that is stop if you can. That's what its official meaning is. And I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Green is pretty much the same as the UK in terms of its go if it's clear. So according to Florida state law, you've still got to yield to cars and vehicles that are already in the intersection and pedestrians. That's the same as the UK, we just don't word it the same. And as you can see, it does also mean when turning left, you need to wait for a gap. So I did that in Orlando and plenty of times on US 192 as well. It's essentially the same as when we turn right at lights, we often have to pull into the middle and wait for then a clear gap. The way I thought about it, I have driven in America plenty of times before, so it didn't take me too long to get back into it. But the way I always try and think about it is in the UK, when we turn right, we're cutting across traffic. And that's why we, of course, give way to those people. When you're doing that in the UK, rather than thinking I'm turning left, I would think I'm cutting across traffic, and that helped me to have no real problems. So when you turn left, you will sometimes find a red arrow, and that means you must not go. So in that direction, you are controlled by a red light. If you've got a yellow light, a yellow arrow, that means your light is about to turn red for the direction you're going in. And if you've got a flashing yellow arrow, that means you may continue if it is safe to do so. So it's usually flashing because it's a particularly dangerous junction. It's reminding you to take caution. Now, turning right at traffic lights is the fun bit. It's really, really good, and it works really, really well. So essentially, unless there is a sign that says no turn on red, you can turn right at traffic lights on a red light. It keeps everything flowing pretty nicely. The law is that you must stop before making the decision to go on that red light, and as you can see from this video clip, not everyone follows that rule, and I would say actually very few, but that is the law. When you are turning right at lights, you need to consider obviously traffic from your left. That's the most common, of course. I was often able to go because my lane was completely clear. Maybe some people in lane 2 and 3, and of course you want to be really careful about people potentially moving into your lane. But if your first lane is clear, you can go on a red light. Then you need to be looking, if they're on a red light, you need to be looking ahead for people coming this way. You need to be looking here for people doing U-turns, and then all good. And you obviously need to look out for emergency vehicles. I think in my whole 2 weeks, I saw one junction where it said no turn on red. You do have some junctions that can be a bit confusing the first time you see it. It's just reminding you that when you turn, you must still give way to pedestrians. Doing U-turns at traffic lights is perfectly legal. There are some junctions that will have signs telling you that you must not do a U-turn, so do look out for them. But it's very, very good. You can do it at a left turn. If you go the wrong way, find a left turn or a left turn at traffic lights and do a U-turn when you get your green. Very, very efficient. When you turn left at lights, do look for people that haven't seen you or aren't thinking potentially when they turn right at lights. So a couple of times I would complete a left turn like this one, and I'd have someone from here that would go and just hasn't really thought about me or seen me. Generally, when I completed turns, I would aim to be in the slower lane if you like. So you can see here when we're doing the right turn, there's 2 lanes and we've picked the right hand one. If of course I was turning left shortly afterwards, then I would have used the left lane. Visiting Disney itself can be pretty exciting, especially for the first time, as you can hear from my kids.
We're going in. Oh my god! M-I-C-K-E-Y.
Fantastic moments, but all the parks are really well laid out. They're very well signposted, and the parking is just something to be aware of that we went before we went. So standard parking is about $30. This is as of 2025. And if you want what's called preferred parking, that's $50. So preferred parking gets you closer to the front. But as we had very young kids, we felt it was a good idea to do that most days. Do be aware they put the price up at weekends, which is amazing, isn't it? But that becomes then $55 because they're not earning enough money. If I'm honest, I'm not sure if I went again, would I always get the preferred parking? Don't get me wrong, it was definitely much closer, and depending on which park you went to, but they actually did have like golf cart buggies with long trains that seemed to be going out to the parking, to the standard parking. So it seemed like it wasn't really particularly necessary. I never had trouble getting into Disney's in terms of traffic. Most days when we left, it was pretty busy, pretty congested. It snarls up at certain points because, of course, traffic lights are not the best way of easing congestion. If they'd invest in some roundabouts, who knows, could be different. Traffic circles. But especially at Hollywood Studios, we went in one evening to see the Fantasmic show. It was honestly, if you go, make sure you go and watch this. It is absolutely mind-blowing. It's fantastic. The only drama was when you exit, pretty much everyone's doing the same. So it was pretty congested and we sat in some pretty heavy traffic. Be prepared for that. You could see on some traffic lights, you get a flashing yellow light like this one, and that is just to inform you that there are some emergency vehicle stations in one of those roads, and obviously to pay extra care and look out. In this case, it was a fire station. Never saw any of them coming out, but we were always, of course, extra aware. You can go through as long as it's not red. So when there aren't traffic lights, most junctions in the US and certainly Florida, you're gonna find stop signs. And of course, it is the law that you must stop at a stop sign. The differences between the stop signs in the UK and the US, as I've said before in one of my videos, in the UK, when there's a stop sign, it's because you've got a restricted view or it's particularly dangerous junction. In the US, they will put a stop sign at just about every junction. So you're going to have some stop signs where you probably feel a bit weird stopping because you can see it's completely clear. But just be aware, if you are seen to roll over a stop sign by a sheriff, you will be pulled over. And these are the kind of interactions you want with a sheriff rather than the other ones. So if they don't have four-way or all-way written under them and you get to a four-way junction but it only has the stop signs, you're essentially looking at who's cutting across who in terms of priorities. If you get to one where it says all-way or four-way underneath, such as this one, these are absolutely amazing. They work really well. I never had a problem at them, but you must stop at the line. Of course, it's a stop sign, and whoever stops before you goes before you. If you stop at the same time, the driver on the left yields to the driver on the right. But you can see this one here warns you there's a stop sign coming up. As you get there, it's got all-way or four-way, I can't remember which, written underneath it. And my cameraman let me down a little bit here. I was driving, but to my left there's a silver car. They stopped just before I did, so they go first, and after that I can go. Even when they're busy, they did work out really well. Just as you're coming into them, note who's there and note when you stop who has stopped before you. As soon as they're gone, you'll find, honestly, people are pretty good. Remember, Americans do these every day, so they're going to be quite good at them. In terms of a few other things to be aware of, so you must keep your rental agreement and your driving license on you in the vehicle. Alcohol must not be open and it must not be in the cab, so you want it in the boot out of sight. And when it is raining, your windscreen wipers, sorry, I'm very American there, windscreen wipers will of course activate, and you must ensure that your headlights are on any time that your windscreen wipers are on. In the really heavy rain, it's actually not unusual for people to just pull over and wait for it to clear up a little bit. Orlando, of course, does have some pretty bad storms. We saw plenty of school buses, but we never actually saw one when they had the stop signs displayed and the red flashing lights. You absolutely must not go past them if that happens. If you're approaching, the only way you can go past them is if there is an actual physical barrier between your side of the road and the other road, or something like an unpaved surface of 5 meters. I never really was worried about that. I was just, if I'm looking for the physical barrier. If you're behind it, you absolutely must not overtake it. Going to the Kennedy Space Center was definitely something that was worth doing. It's about 1:20 hours from where we were staying. That's when you sort of rack up a bit more of the toll usage, etc. But it was an absolutely brilliant day. A really easy drive. We saw a couple of gators on the road as we were doing it. Really worth seeing. If you do go, At the end, when you go to the gift shop, I'm sure, make sure you get yourself up to the top. There's a bridge that I think a lot of people miss, and it's an actual suspension bridge that the crew that went to the moon walked over. Gatorland is another thing I would highly recommend. That was a great day out. My kids absolutely loved Gatorland. They actually said it was one of their favourite days. Really fascinating place, feeding some baby gators, etc. And that was just a real delight. It was old school fun to go in there. They had some areas where the kids could feed birds, and the birds would come down and sit on you. They loved that. It was pretty interactive and just very friendly people and staff all around. The other thing I'd recommend, if you have an interest, or maybe even if you don't, is popping up to Orlando and watching an Orlando Magic game. As you can see, I took the wife out for date night and took her to Orlando Magic against the Boston Celtics, and the Magic managed to come out victorious, which was fantastic. My wife's got no interest in the NBA, no interest at all, but she absolutely loved it. She just loved the atmosphere, how it was, etc. It was a fantastic evening. If you do go, I'd highly recommend, if you've got a hire car, book yourself parking in the Geico Centre. That's next door. The Americans really do know how to run things. It's so well laid out. As you get there, you go up to the top, you park, and then get through security across a bridge and you're in the stadium. It's absolutely fantastic. So I think I've covered most things. It's just one for parents. Most of us, of course, that go out to Florida have got youngsters, taking them to Disney. Just one in case you need it. Poppy had an ear infection at one point, probably all the swimming we were doing. Blizzard Beach. Oh. The place we managed to find was a CVS pharmacy, and we managed to book her online for an appointment and got seen by a doctor. Obviously, you have to pay. There's no healthcare, is there? You have to pay for it, but managed to get her the medicine that she needed. Do be prepared. It's pretty expensive over there. Unfortunately, the pound is not what it used to be against the dollar, but the dollar doesn't buy you very much anymore. Food shopping is very expensive. Anything that you buy is expensive over there. So do be prepared for that, of course. But if you are going, make sure I have a great time. I hope this has helped somewhat. If there is anything that's inaccurate, obviously do let me know, no problem. And I wish you all the best driving safely out there.